Hey everybody, I'm Bob Baker with Jazz Guitar today, and we're here with Grant Gordy, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
So am I. Thank you, Bob. I'm glad to be here.
I'm new to you, man. I don't even know how I discovered you, and I went, how have I missed out? How have I missed this guy? I can't tell you how impressed I am with what you're doing.
Oh man.
And I know that everybody else is too, because you've been in Fretboard Journal. I'm like late to the party, and I get it. I do get it.
It's a small party, Bob. It's an intimate affair, an intimate gathering.
Well, for people that don't know, you play with David Grisman for many years.
Yeah, about six years.
Yeah, 6 years. And if for people who don't know who David Grisman is, because I actually talked to a couple of jazz friends of mine who don't know who David is. David was probably the first guy to really popularize traditional acoustic instruments in jazz and put them together. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a large component of what he did. He was coming from. I mean, he was a bluegrass mandolin player, and
Right.
he came up. You know, came up sort of at the end of the folk revival era and got really deeply into Bill Monroe's music, who's the guy, for those of you who don't know, Bill
No.
Monroe being the guy who invented bluegrass music. And David, Bill was also a mandolin player, and David, being a mandolin player, learned all Bill Monroe's tunes and all his licks as, innovate, assimilate, create, right? Or the other way around, whatever it is.
Yeah, all that stuff, right.
All that stuff. He learned all Bill's lines, and he decided at some point he was kind of starting to take influence from all this other music, and he started writing his own tunes that were influenced by Django swing music and and like bebop and but also very much grounded in like folk music, very much grounded in bluegrass, using typically like bluegrass related instruments,
Right.
so kind of rooted in that world, but bringing in all this other stuff. And at the time, it was a totally novel thing to do.
I mean, he recorded Spain.
He did, yeah.
Korea, Spain, which is not, that's not for the faint of heart, really. And
Yeah.
so I mean, he was the first guy that I, became aware of to do that. But I haven't seen many others, not that have gotten any kind of notoriety. And it's something that,
Well, there have been some. I mean, definitely a huge example is somebody like Bela Fleck, the banjo player, who
absolutely.
has gone on to become, obviously one of the great forces of music in general.
Right.
And he like and has really bridged a lot of gaps,
Right.
and has certainly, in terms of the repercussions of all of this in kind of the bluegrass world or the folk music world, people like that, Edgar Meyer, folks in that kind of scene,
Right.
have really like raised the bar of like technicality for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Thile being another example, who
I
many
was going
people
to mention
know. Yeah, made duo records with Meldau and stuff, and so there's a lot of this kind of cross pollination happening. And yeah, certainly you know it's a high bar, but the bar is kind of getting raised.
it's an incredibly high bar because the guys that do it are all, virtuoso level players. And Chris is obviously with the Punch Brothers and everything that he's done. I
Mm.
mean, it's just it's but then along comes you, and you compose a lot of the stuff that you play. Obviously, you're playing. I mean, you're playing some, and I wanted you to do the talking on this. I mean, you're playing some very sophisticated stuff. You're playing, it's true ensemble music. It's not like, okay, this one's in G. Okay, I'll take the first, one, you take the. I mean, you're playing true ensemble, almost classical suites and things like that. I mean, you got to you got to rehearse that stuff. You just don't
Yeah,
wing it. It's real ensemble, heavily heavily jazz influence as far as I'm concerned.
sure. Yeah.
Heavily jazz influence, but you're playing it on traditional instruments. So I want you to do the talking here. Tell us about your musical journey and how you came to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, as I said, music like Grisman's music and his contemporaries, the guitarist Tony Rice, was a really, you know, uh, intensely important early influence for me. Or some of that stuff as I was growing up. My dad's a guitar player and was aware of a lot of different kinds of music. But I heard like Tony Rice records when I was growing up, and I went through the requisite blues and rock and kind of jam band stuff when I was like a teenager and just starting out, and never took lessons. Didn't go through any like high school band really, or that's not true. I did like one year of like a high school band in the I think the third high school I went to, because we moved around a lot, but didn't have really education or teachers or anything like that, and so it was all very like following my nose just into what I was interested in. And I got interested in improvisation primarily through just messing around on the instrument, at home, sitting in my room, or kind of got checked out Fish and the Grateful Dead, and there's like that's like that's one way to kind of check out like improvised music in kind of in a way that's not like harmonically overwhelming, or especially if you're coming from a pretty self-taught background. It's like it's a gentle like entry into some of the concepts of like improvised music and also composed music and stuff. So I owe some gratitude to that music for sure. And anyway, eventually, kind of as a teenager, discovered David's music and sort of reacquainted myself with Tony Rice's playing. And there's just especially in those early David Grisman quintet recordings, there's just a drive and sense of like just like kind of urgency and experimentation with that music. Again, these people are all they're not coming from jazz vocabulary. They're coming from folk music vocabulary.
So how did Grisman become aware of you?
Of me?
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, fast forward a couple years, like I was kind of getting into this music, and I'll add the little side thing here that like, once I started checking out David's music and Tony's music, I would read about who they were influenced by, and then I started kind of checking out, Miles and Coltrane and Wes and Django and a lot of this kind of unbelievably great, beautiful music, and I would just, I would start to try to learn this stuff on my own. Eventually I started to like do little jazz gigs around where I was living at the time. And so I was starting to learn a little bit about this other tradition of music. I'm not really into the idea of like genre,
Right.
but I do think like traditions are real and cool, and the whole standards and like bebop and all, like those are all real things and real pathways, and I it's a second language for me, but it's one I love really deeply. So I was anyway just trying to absorb a lot of different kinds of music, and eventually I was able to go to this camp that David put on in the early 2000s, put on a mandolin camp in California. And I went there one year. I was able to get a scholarship to go because I couldn't afford to just go, but I got a scholarship and attended, but I pretty much left my mandolin in the car, and I just had I brought my guitar in with me, and was kind of hanging out and trying, in my sort of like non, hopefully non-intrusive way, like try to make it evident to David, like, hey man, like I'm here on your scene, and I know your music, you know,
I spent a
which
little time with you.
yeah. So he became aware of me there, and while I was there in the Bay Area hanging out for a couple of days, he invited me, and I'd been traveling with a friend. He invited my friend and me over for dinner,
Oh,
and we
wow.
had dinner at his house, and like I was like freaking out having dinner at my hero's house, and so anyway, when I was living in Colorado at the time, and when he would come play with his band, in Denver or Boulder, I'd go check him out, I kind of got to know him a little bit, so I'd get to like sit in when they'd come play, and so he became aware of me, and then eventually I got the call. And just, yeah, I tried to, I think he once said, or maybe a couple times, more than once said, I was the most prepared guitarist that's ever showed up for that gig. Like I really did my homework. And I just knew the music. I knew a lot of the music already because I cared about it that much.
Yeah.
But I also really, like, I made sure I knew all my parts. Like, doesn't mean I was like completely masterful in every respect, but I definitely tried to really make sure and learn everything I could going into it.
That's a big deal.
It was a really big deal for me.
Yeah, that's a big, preparing to walk into a situation. So many people don't.
I mean, I don't have the luxury. I don't think I'm like, I'm not the guy that can just like show up and do everything immediately. Like I feel like I'm a slow digester. I mean, I'm always processing. I'm always like working on stuff, and it doesn't even always sound good, really. But that's just it's the process because this is like a lifelong thing,
Yeah.
this pursuit of music, right? And it's like
Yeah.
everything's always gesting. I mean, there were even times when David would kind of take me aside on the gig and sort of, in his way, kind of admonish me, like, "Hey, man, you like basically, I was just like trying to work things out a little too much, like in my solos in particular, like
Right.
sort of trying to go in too many different directions and just trying to figure my thing out. And I was
Yeah.
still in my 20s at the time, and I feel like I've kind of come more into my own voice or my own style since then. But he was willing to tell me like, hey man.
Well, it's funny. Not to drop names, but what the hell, why not? The last
Well,
artist.
Paul McCartney once told me never name
Yeah,
drop.
yeah, never name drop. Yeah, I understand that. That's the way we used to. Yes, exactly.
Anyway.
But the guy the artist. Now I just got off an interview with Bob Benedetto, but he's not he does play, but he's not known as a player. He's known as a builder. But the guy that I interviewed before that, who's on the cover right now, is Al Di Meola. And so in talking with Al, his story is there's some parallels with his story. He was 19 years old when he got the call to play with Chick Corea, and he got like thrown into this thing. His first gig was Carnegie Hall with
Wow.
Chick. I mean, his first gig with Chick was Carnegie Hall, and he's
Yeah.
reading it. And so the experience that you have working with your hero, because that was his hero, is a parallel. I mean, it's an absolute parallel, and it does happen. And he felt, and the only reason I'm bringing him up is that he felt that he knew the music, he was prepared, and he put in the time and put in the work. It still was a huge challenge for him to play with his heroes, because all the other three guys were his heroes, and that the band was already established at the time.
Yeah.
Just like you, the real parallels.
Yeah.
So keep going. I'm fascinated.
I don't know. I mean, it was an interesting experience in a lot of ways. Like I'm really grateful, as I said. I didn't have like an academic career of any kind, let alone in music.
Right.
Didn't have teachers growing up. Didn't do lessons until I was like already playing professionally and started to like seek out just in the odd lesson with people for my own, edification. But didn't like, I didn't come out of that like, I didn't come up with that kind of guidance. And so I really appreciate that I was able to find myself in the situation that like this kind of, whether David considered it this or not, I considered it kind of a mentorship or sort of apprenticeship or whatever. It's like that kind of old thing that you do where you kind of have time to hang with an older cat who's like, yeah, that was really helpful for me. And so there was just that kind of direct thing of getting to be in that band, see how things operate. But the other thing is the permission, coming from the standpoint of like being a string musician, living in this kind of string band world, the permission that people like David and Tony and another hero with whom I'm really close and work a lot with now, Daryl Anger, the fiddle player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all of those people were and continue to be just such innovators, bringing in so much different stylistic influence and checking out so many different things, and really gave us all permission to try stuff. And whether it's synthesizing different kinds of styles or just permission to like make your own music, make your own sounds that appeal to you. And that was one of the big lessons I think I got from David, is just like I said, that permission to make your own music. So yeah, that's been an important lesson for me.
Well, let me ask you a question. It's a little personal. Did you go to college?
No,
Did you finish high school?
no.
Where do you get your intellectual power? You are an intellect. You are not your language, choice of words, your articulation, all of that operates at a very high level. And I mean, I deal with a few smart people. Is that from your parents, or I mean, where does this high standard as a player, high standard as a musician, ability to grasp those high standards and actually functionally make them happen? You have to have a tremendous amount of horsepower up here. And not only do you have to have the horsepower, but you have to be able to harness it and all that. Do you have a feeling of that for yourself?
As in, like, do I see myself that way?
Yeah, I mean, how do you reconcile all that?
I mean, I think, frankly, like I feel like frustrated that I don't understand things better. Like I wish. I mean, even just to like little things that have nothing really to do with music. Like I wish, I wish my like reading comprehension was better. I wish I could like remember, like when I read a newspaper article, I wish I could remember. You know what I mean? It's like so maybe that's part of it. It's just like I want to do better than I do. I want to be a better player than I am. Clearly, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always felt that way. And so that's kind of all I see from my perspective, is like the things that I'm striving for.
Yeah,
And
Einstein wanted to have better reading comprehension too.
well,
Just so that you know. I mean, we're people that have that intellectual curiosity feel that way.
yeah.
They just feel that way.
I mean, I sometimes, I'll think about like I remember when I was whatever 12, like watching a 12 or 13, watching a video of that in like my friend's parents' basement. We'd all hang out with my little group of buddies, and we'd watch that Led Zeppelin movie that you could get on VHS, right?
Yeah.
I remember watching the close up of Jimmy Page's left hand as he's doing that, or whatever, that kind of shreddy pentatonic thing. And I remember distinctly thinking, oh my God, like how does he do that? How do hands move so fast? How is he thinking that fast? Just so like alien language, which
Yeah.
now, I see, I'm going to go see Kurt play tomorrow. He's going to play with Peter Bernstein and a great rhythm section, which I'm really excited about. And whenever I see Kurt, I'm just like, oh my God, how can he do that? Like that, or Bernstein too, in a different, very different way. Just like, how do you play with such intention? And anyway, that's all to say, like,
No, stay with that. This is gold. Stay
yeah.
with
So
that.
like, I know that feeling so well when I observe these other examples of like great writers or great painters, or any discipline where you see this incredible force kind of coming through. And I sometimes wonder, like, man, what if I could like go in a time machine back to my 13-year-old self and like hear my music now? Like, would I feel that way? Would I be like, oh wow, this is like, how do you play like that? But of course I can't. Like, I don't see myself that way because I've heard everything I've ever played for all the years I've been playing, and like I hear all the things that I'm like striving to do that I don't do. And in fact, this is the thing I've just been thinking about a lot lately, is like, in a way it's kind of cool, like the distance between what you can do or whatever your limitation and what you're striving for. Like, your style is kind of in that distance, you know what I mean?
Very well
And
put.
that's kind of cool,
Yeah, no, that's very well put.
So that's my thing. I'm more just thinking about what I wish I could do, right?
Well, you said something earlier, and I want to get back to that, what I wish I could do. But you said something earlier that was really, really profound. You said, I don't think in genres, I think in traditions.
Mm.
And honest to God, that's a quote. That's a great quote. You know, I'm gonna have to grab that because um, I like that a lot. So getting back to your distance thing, you know, somebody smarter than me once said that whatever you can conceive of, conceptualize, think about, you can achieve. You can achieve. You know, I mean, or humans can achieve it. You know, it's the things you can't even possibly fathom that don't even come into your mind. And so it when you say that there are things you can do and things that you want to do, and then that your style is in that space, that's more profundity, if you will. You know, I use that crazy word. Where do you want to go with where do you want to go from where you are? I mean, what is it that you envision as, boy, I want to get to that mountain over there. I wonder how I'm going to get there.
I mean, I think you know, there's a few things. I mean, it's all very much just like musical. Like I want to be more fluent in musical language. Like I want to understand harmony better. Like I want to learn more tunes. I want to learn more bebop tunes. Like I want to know that language better because I just love that language so much. I want to, you know, I want to do more writing. I want to like understand the possibilities for texture and different kinds of ensembles better, you know, to be able to write and like it just a bunch of, you know, I just uh you know, like I want to make less mistakes when I play because I make a lot of mistakes, but you know, like I want to stop
Well,
hitting
well,
like
you're going to see two of the absolute greats.
yeah.
I mean, you talk about guys that have great facility between Peter Bernstein and Kurt Rosenwinkel. I mean, you're you know the luminaries that you're putting your flashlight on and going, I want to go there. I mean, that's tremendous. I mean, that's
Yeah, I mean
tremendous.
this is good, you know. I mean, and there's versions of excellence like that in so many different styles of music or so many different disciplines or you know, and um but certainly as a guitar improviser, like
Right.
of course that really appeals to me, you know, that kind of language.
Well, don't sell yourself short in this regard because I don't. I think you're the high water mark when it comes to the genre. You know, it's called the genre that you're playing. Did I just do air quotes? Yeah, I did, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. Um, because I was really taken with your music in terms of the technical, but it's also musically accessible. It sounds like music to me.
Cool, that's great.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
it's accessible, and I think that what you're doing is really important. You're pioneer, not your pioneering is the, you know, Grisman is probably the pioneer, but you're continuing, like you're grabbing that wagon and continuing to go west, young man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche. I mean, cliches are cliche for a reason, I guess. But you
Right,
know, I'm standing on the shoulders of these, you know,
right.
these great musicians, and yeah, and it's an interesting time now because you know the landscape is really different now. Like the way like there's so much access to everything all the
Right.
time, and I think that's I don't know what it means. I can't really make a coherent statement as to well therefore this is what's going to happen with music because I don't know,
No.
but I know that you know when David was like writing you know what he called dog music in 1975 and starting the band, you know, starting his band, I don't know, it's got to be different. The fact that you know in order to hear Spain he would have had to either happen to hear it on the radio or go to the record store in Marin County and buy you know Light as a Feather.
Right.
You know, but like it's just the whole way of like accessing music is different now, and the way people seems like the way people assimilate music now is different, and it's interesting for me, I guess, to kind of feel sometimes like kind of one foot, because I definitely remember growing up at a time when, you know, the only music I had was like the tapes or a few CDs I had, you know, and couldn't just like go online and listen to anything. Um, Feels a little bit like one foot in both that older world and in this modern world.
Well, you know, you're also your generation, if you will. I'm a little bit older than you, maybe a year or two. Your your generation, you guys, it's there's a plus minus to all this, and I'm going to say mostly a plus. You don't have to have a record label to put your music into the public.
Yeah.
And back when I was coming along, I mean, you had to either be with, you know, with Atlantic or Warner Brothers or, you know, or whoever. I mean, there was only like about maybe a dozen labels tops for everything. And if
Yeah.
you weren't with them, you just weren't heard. I mean, at
Yeah.
all. You know, there was nowhere to go with that.
Yeah.
So you're able to create your own music. I mean, studio time. I mean, you know, this thing we can all do on our computers at home. I mean,
Yeah.
that was at the time that was hundreds of dollars an hour, you
Yeah.
know, to go into a studio to get anything done. So you couldn't just record and put stuff out. There was no place to record it. There was no place to play it. There was no way to generate any publicity for it. I mean, you had to be in the machine in order to do anything. So today's guys, you know, they can say, yeah, but there's so much stuff, so much stuff, so much stuff. Well, you know, you just cream rises to the top. You know, you just kind of keep going, keep getting better at it. So you're one of these guys that's like, you know, doing everything, and just about everybody in your generation is. I mean, you're teaching, you're playing, you're gigging, you're recording, you're doing, you know, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube, you're doing all that kind of stuff, you know, to make it work. And you know, you're grabbing the opportunity by the you know what's and you know, making it happen.
Well, I think that's become uh, at least in my kind of circle, it seems like to some degree we've all sort of accepted that
Right.
this is how it works now, you know, and I, you know, I really don't want to be spending much of my time on social media if I can help it. I don't want, you know, um, and you know, it's also it's just it's necessary, you know, and man, you know, fortunately, I really like teaching, and
Yeah.
that's been great. Like, so I'm grateful to have like built that up over the last you know, last decade or so. I feel like it's really built up, and I've, you know, I have students coming from all over the place, and yeah, I really enjoy that, and yeah, I mean, I think that's the only way really to make it work, is to kind of have a lot of irons in the fire. You know, unfortunately, like as far as the kind of music I do, for the most part, like I've been really lucky to kind of only play music I want to play like I want to play it. You know, I've never really thought about like, well, I should change the way I play to kind of, because it would be more, it would appeal more to this kind
Right.
of thing, or like, oh, I want to try to like get that really great like country gig or something, or whatever, you know.
So
I mean,
what's your most current recorded project out there? What do you what's your most current?
yeah, well, the latest one, the one I've been really pushing for the last few months actually, is it's releasing on March 3rd on Bandcamp, and then a few weeks later it'll come out on all the streaming and stuff.
Right.
And it's my own record, my own band, all my original music, and it's actually sort of a follow up to my first record that I made, which was just under my own name, Grant Gordy, which we did about 13, 14 years ago. And it was with just like great young, great young players on the string scene. This fiddler Alex Hargraves, who at the time was like 16, I think, when he made that first record, but sounded obviously so beyond his years. And this mandolinist Dominic Leslie, who's now living in Nashville and is great. And Paul Coert, the bassist, played on that first record, who's now in the Punch Brothers.
Yeah.
All people who've gone on to become, you know, stalwarts of the scene, you know, in their own right.
Sure.
And I've actually, such as it is, I've had like a really positive response about that record. I've had people for years saying like, man, when are you going to do another GGQ record? And like a small but devoted number of people have
Yeah.
talked to me about how much they like that record, and so it was always kind of on the back burner. I was doing stuff with David and just busy with. I have this band called Mr. Sun with Daryl Anger and this great mandolinist Joe Walsh, um, which is busy, and we've got projects going, and but something I think about the pandemic, I was just like, man, everything kind of stopped for a little bit except for teaching, and then once things started to look a little bit like we could start to play with other people again, I just thought like, man, maybe now is really the time to finally do another record with that group. Like I feel such an affinity with those musicians, and I've been playing a lot with this bassist Aidan O'Donnell, who lives here in New York. I made a standards trio record a few years ago that he played on. We've been playing, gigs around town. Also, we play in that band Mr. Sun together. He's played with like Steve Kuhn trio, and he's just super heavy, just great bassist that I've just really cultivated a good relationship with. And then I have this long-standing relationship with Dominic and Alex, the mandolin and fiddle player, that goes back, years and years and years and years. And I just thought, like, man, I would like to do more, with that band. And so I finally was able to carve out some recording time, and then I realized, like, man, I better finish a record's worth of writing. So I took a couple like little writing retreats and kind of made demos. Anyway, we finally got this record done, which is finally about to come out. Like I said, it's going to be like 14 years since the first one came out, with more or less the same band. And that one is called Peripheral Visions, and it's all new music. It's interesting too because it's like a string band record, and it's all tunes by the guitarist, but it's not really like a guitar record. It's not like.
Give us an example of what you mean by that.
Well, it's not. There's like some melodies that I play, but it's not like you might have a record where you're really like the guitar is playing all the melodies and taking all the first solos, and it's like it's very like guitar is in the foreground, right?
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say. Was saying earlier about you compose and perform true ensemble music.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean that's really what I'm striving for, because I think that's just what I hear. I don't want to hear like a platform to feature myself. Like I just want to hear like the best music I can make, and to me that's about like exploring texture,
conversation, texture. That's what I picked up on listening to what you're doing. That's why I was so excited about your stuff, is that you're holding conversations with these. It's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's all about the fabric that you guys and the texture that you guys are putting together, weaving in and out of each other and making it happen.
Yeah. And
no, I was going to ask you to play a little something for us. I mean, you don't have to play a whole tune, just a lick or two. If someone said to you, what's a I hate this sounds awful, and I don't have a better way to say it, but what's a Grant Gordy lick? Here's something. What is something that is sort of, you feel is kind of a signature thing that you do, that you sort of created, from all of your influences,
Well, I'll tell you something that I think about, but it doesn't mean that it's not something I came up with. I feel like it's just me kind of refracting stuff that I've learned from listening to a lot of different kinds of music, or just checking out like.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm a big fan of the guitarist Lage Lund, and I've taken a few lessons with him over the years, and one thing I think he might have been one of the first people. I don't know if it was like because of him talking about it or just observing his playing, and then kind of just starting to become aware of this concept. He was one of the first people that I think kind of opened me up to the idea of harmony being like, rather than like, well, here's this chord progression. Like those are all individual voices, right? That are like moving to and happen to intersect in a way that creates harmony, right? And I've been kind of, like I said, I'm not okay, got it, now I can do it and I'm perfect. Like I'm a slow processor. I've been like thinking about this for a long time and kind of digesting this concept, and I've really tried to learn how to reflect that in my playing, even if like I said, I mean, that's that distance between like that ideal of like, beautiful improvised polyphony, like a fugue or something, and then what I can actually do, which is like, I've only got so much like chops, I've only got so much like understanding
Well, you
of
got four fingers and a thumb.
only got so many fingers.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I think about like, one of the tunes, there's a tune on the new record that this isn't like a signature lick, it's just something that came to mind. And like there's a tune on this new record that is kind of a sort of sad-ish ballad that I dedicated to Tony Rice.
Right.
And it's got a part like in the B section where I just it was totally like, I rarely like sit down and write at the piano, right? I usually write on the guitar.
Right.
And I know you're like supposed to write on piano because that's
no, you're not.
But most of my writing I write on guitar, and a lot of times it'll be based on just harmonic sounds I like, and so I remember like just coming up with like, it's basically this chord progression. It's like, or this like a little slice of the chord progression. It goes like G flat major 7, and then it goes like C half diminished to F7 to B flat minor 6 because there's the open G string in there, and then you get like sort of first inversion F to an A flat major sound to a G, just kind of G major. And I know it sounds like a lot of information, but it's just, but in sequence, as part of a sequence of ideas, I like the sound of it. And also I try to think about, well, how can I kind of like have this be more like multiple moving parts? So I can't, I sort of
you and Mozart.
It's like, that's different for me than like, okay, I look at a guitar and I see chords, and so okay, yeah, or whatever, or maybe like,
you're moving.
There's a lot of ways to approach it,
Yeah. No, I mean that's I mean it's moving voices and counterpoint and all that stuff. So,
and I want to say also, like, I should add, as like a starting point, like coming from more or less like bluegrass or folk music background, guitar tends to be, especially in like a string band, like a kind of bluegrass related context, there's generally no drums, and everybody is responsible simultaneously for the harmony and the rhythm.
Right.
So typically in like a bluegrass guitar setting, what you're doing is you're playing really percussively, really, really rhythmically. And what that means a lot of times is you're strumming. And when you're not strumming, you're playing single note lines.
Right.
And it's like kind of one or the other,
Right. No, I hear you.
And so I've, for me, I've just kind of been trying to learn more and more about how to blend those things together and think of harmony as things that are more like fluid and loose, and also think of lines as things that are more related to harmony and
right.
So I know that's a bit of a cop out in the realm of like,
no, not at all. That's a very, because it's it's your voice leading, you're talking about all that kind of stuff. No, this is exactly what we want to talk about, because what you just played, that's not a bluegrass tune. I mean,
true. Yeah.
There's more than 3 chords in it. 4
Nobody
chords.
died down by the river.
Nobody died. I mean, no, I mean that's, but you're playing that sophisticated. There's a lot of jazz harmony in there. You're talking about adding 6, or maybe you're altering chords, flat 5, sharp 5, flat 9, all that, and then you're moving voices within the harmony and all that stuff. I mean, no, that's all. Those are all normal in classical music, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it's in a lot of jazz. Not all jazz, because like you say, the Freddie Green approach to harmony, chunk, 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 chunk,
which is totally great, by the way.
No, it's a whole different. Listen, try to do that sometime. And
right.
And remember that he played acoustically. He never played through an amplifier. Those strings were like an inch off of the board. I mean, and with his time and the way, listen, I've totally respect the hell out of that guy, Anyway, but the point is that, it's your approach is very, very sophisticated with these instruments, and that's really freaking cool. What about your single note approach? Is there anything that's that you sort of feel like this is something that I'm working on? It might not be your exclusive thing, but is there, what is your approach?
Yeah, I can tell you that. I mean, because I teach a lot. This relates a lot to what I teach. And I generally, like, if I had to be way more broad brush than I actually am, unnuanced as I would actually think about this.
Yeah.
Like, as a general approach, I think that at some point, this is kind of part of my spiel that I say to people because I believe it. Like, at some point, I think every guitar player learns this idea that, like, oh, you want to improvise? Learn the scale. Everybody learns that at some point,
Yeah.
And I don't care like what kind of music they play. Somehow it's like this truism that everybody absorbs. It's like in the ether, just like, and as soon as you pick up a guitar, you have heard that. You've heard somebody tell you that somehow, and that's everybody. That's what they learn. And I've kind of realized, especially the more I teach and the more kind of patterns I see that people tend to get hung up on. I don't mean like scale patterns, but just like patterns of thinking, patterns of
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Certain kind of ruts. Like, I think there is this kind of, there is kind of a danger in this idea of like, oh, the scale, you want to play a G major chord, play the G major scale. Of course, that presupposes that no note in the scale really has any more value than any other note in the scale. And therefore, I think it really creates kind of a block to really hearing what we're playing.
Right.
And my number one thing is all about, like, I want to try to hear what I'm playing, and I want to try to play what I'm hearing. And that really connects to, even if you're playing 26-2 or whatever, like, it's really based on like the fundamental triads all the time. Like, you got to be able to hear the fifth of whatever chord you're on, no matter what. You know what I mean?
Yeah, all of the great players had great ears.
Yeah, I think that's
all the great. And so if you think about scales, and I certainly know a few, but scales are a roadmap, a quantification of where it's a way for people to, it's like words, any words,
Yeah.
you can read about it climbing a mountain, but that's not climbing a mountain.
Yeah, or you can even try to like articulate the process of climbing a mountain, and you could know all the words. You could but if you don't say them in proper like rhythmic syntax,
right.
If you might say something like, mountain shoes climb my path up
exactly.
sun, water, it doesn't make any sense. Like, somebody might have like a vague notion of what you're trying to communicate, but it also sounds like you had a stroke.
Well, the way I talk about, the way I feel about, and I've studied, I did go to school, and all that stuff, and the way I feel about, being able to read music and writing music and all that kind of thing is that when you kind of have a topographical map, you're going on a hike up that mountain, up that hill, and you have a musical score. Okay. Well, that map is not that mountain.
Yeah.
As is, that score is not that music.
Yeah.
Now, some people can look at that and they can visualize it and hear it in their head, where they can literally take a look at it and they hear everything that's on that page, but it's still not the music.
Yeah.
But
maybe what they're hearing is the music, but that's not the same thing.
It's not the same. So the other thing, the beauty of it is that, knowing modes, knowing scales, knowing, or at least having what I think it was Miles that said, is it Miles or one of those guys said, learn all that shit and then forget it and play.
Yeah, I think that was Charlie Parker.
Charlie Parker, thank you. And that's really true. It's good to know all that kind of stuff for no other reason, so people can't snow you.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, of
I
course,
mean,
yeah.
if you ever want to listen to, if you ever want to listen, this is awful, and I'm sorry I'm saying it. If you ever want to listen to a bunch of people that can't play, they're going to be talking theory to you. You
No,
know what I mean?
I understand. I do. I know
Yeah,
exactly
they're going
what
to be
you mean.
talking theory. Well, let's play that. Yeah, and you go, and you know, because they can't play, but they get that's their fun. You know,
Yeah, yeah, I
and I'm
mean
not
that's
putting them down for it, but it's not music.
yeah,
It's theory. It's this. It's that. It's the other thing, and you know, and all that. So, but all of the great play, all of the great players, singers, whatever, it's all here.
yeah, and that's kind of been my main thesis is like really music, just playing good music is a it's funny because like you see, like I said, I go see Kurt or Pete,
Right.
and I hear what's coming out of them and I'm just like, oh man, it's hitting me, it's coming towards me.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced that like I think the greatest musicians are really like taking a lot in.
Right.
That's kind of what's happening is they're hearing and they can hear what they're doing. And really that's again, that's that distance between like how clearly, I mean, to me, that's the process of improving as a musician. Like how clearly can I hear what I'm doing versus my ideal?
Well, let me take that one step further. Give it. How clearly can I hear what the other guy is doing?
Yeah,
In other words,
absolutely.
what's he doing on that mandolin over there? You
Yeah.
know, what's he doing on that bass over? What's he, how much of that am I interacting with and all of that? And in your own compositions, I'm sure you're thinking, wow, this is going to be a great part for that guy and a great, and this kind of thing. And then I can see all this is all going together and all that. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, you got to feel it, you got to hear it, create it in the real world.
Mhm.
I mean that it's I mean, books are great, we all love books, and we can all this is awful, but we can all read books about sex, but you
Yeah,
know
it's not the same thing.
it's nice to have a partner.
And and like, sadly, it's like you do have to do it in the real world. Music, that is. I mean, but
I brought it up, it's me,
yeah.
I took us down that road, but go ahead.
But like, it's probably not as easy to play in the real world as it once was. I don't know. I mean, I think that, you know, I think there are probably less gigs. I just heard about how the Philly, I'd never played there, but I heard how the Philly Folk Festival is closing down after like 61 years.
Well, it's definitely in transition.
Yeah.
I don't think the music scene's ever going to go away. Now you've got a tour coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got
Yeah,
about
I've got a place to play, which is cool because this is going to be the first time this music has been played since we recorded it. And it's already been a year since we made the record.
Yeah. So you
So
got a tour coming up. Let's talk about that a little bit because we're starting to really run into some time. And
getting kind of
I could
dark.
talk to you for a long time because I love what you're doing and I love your intellectual curiosity and what's going on with you. I mean, I really do love it. That's why we're here. But so let's talk about some of the practical angles here. First of all, the new record's coming. I'm kind of I know I could talk to you for 3 more hours. I
Yeah.
really I haven't even picked up a guitar and we haven't really played and and we could definitely go down that road. But
Yeah.
you've got a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I really say people go on YouTube, look for Grant, look for everything he's doing, and
Thanks.
check out all of this stuff that we're talking about because it's important and it's really cool and it's fun music to listen to and it's
Thank
it's
you.
it's groundbreaking stuff. So we'll go there. The new record coming out, and the name of that record is
Peripheral Visions.
all right. I love that name, and it's on Grant's website. You got
Yeah.
home about Peripheral Visions. There's a whole segment for you, and then lessons, gigs, contact, and more. It's all there. But you're going to start playing on March the 30th at the Cock and Bull.
Yeah, so that's the first gig on this tour coming up to support the record. I think we're doing, I can't remember, 6 or 7 gigs. Uh, yeah, and that's pretty much all I've got planned around the record, particularly. But I've got other stuff, coming up this summer. I've got a bunch of things with my band, Mr. Sun, that I have not put on my website yet. So keep an eye on that because there's more coming up.
I know you got a bunch of dates, and you're going to actually be going out west as well. You're gonna be in the Northeast. You're gonna be in Maine. You're gonna be in New York. You're gonna be in Mass. You're gonna be in Connecticut. You're all over the place. So people go to your website, which is what, grantgordy.com. What is your
That's
website?
right. Yeah.
Grant Gordy.
GrantGordy.com.
Go to
Yeah. Also, go to
grantgordy.com
my gigs.
and then check that out. Go buy tickets. Go see this band. It's incredible. It's definitely, it's definitely a delight. So I'm highly recommending that. The new record, you need to need to buy that.
Yeah, please do. It'll be out. It's you can pre-order it now on Bandcamp, so
Yeah.
that's an option. It's coming out on March 3rd. You can, then you can buy a CD or stream it or download it. And then it'll a few weeks after that, it'll be out on all the streaming services and everything.
Very, very cool. Well, I love all that. I wish you a lot of luck with everything, man. And
Thanks so
I
much.
really want to encourage you, just keep driving it, keep pushing it, because I think that what you're doing, well, is really cool. So it's really cool. But I also think it's important. I think that you have maturated into a new tradition, if you will, or you're continuing a tradition, and taking it places that that it's logical for it to go, if you will, but someone's got to actually do it, and God knows where your creativity is going to take all this stuff, but it'll be fun to watch it happen, man.
Yeah, it's nice to, yeah, just hopefully we're all doing our best to express what we want to hear, and and hopefully there's room for it in the world,
There
that's
definitely will be. I mean, it's John Nesbitt wrote a book back, I guess, in the 70s, called Megatrends. And this was a book, and I'll never forget this. One of his concepts was high tech, high touch. And so he's talking about the opposite poles of human existence. So the higher tech the job you have, the more you want to go out in the woods, the higher touch you want your hobbies to be, so you get a balance going there. And so as life gets more technical and more technical and more technical, people are going to be more interested in the things that really hit them in the soul, in the heart. Acoustic guitars, acoustic instruments, guitars in general, music in general, there's always the crazier the life gets and the more advanced it gets, the more that people are going to, there's roots music and the blending of these traditions and all the genres. I just believe there's a great future for it, but you got to keep doing it, so I'm encouraging people to check you out and to grab your thing, oh geez, did I just say that? To grab it and come up within this genre and this new tradition, and you don't have to be the only rock band in town. You can be the Beatles, if you will, but there were a whole lot of other bands that did great stuff.
I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Well, I absolutely believe it. Otherwise, I do believe it. All right, so I'm Bob Baker with Jazz Guitar Today. We're here with Grant Gordy, and I've got one more question for you.
Okay, I just want to thank you for having me, and thanks for taking the time to hang and just for such an easy, fun conversation.
Oh, cool. Well, what's your dream project?
Oh man,
money, no object. Somebody said, here, you can have any musicians, any record, any whatever. What would be at this point in your life?
Yeah.
What would
I mean, I think if there was some combination of, if I could write, had the capability of like writing good parts for like a small chamber group to play with, to kind of augment, a really great like rhythm section with like Brian Blade, you know what I mean? Just like,
I know, but here's what I'm going to tell you: do it.
yeah, hey,
just start doing it, because I mean, symphony orchestras are Steve Vai plays with a symphony orchestra, from time to time, and so does Ingve. And I mean, I could go on and on and on about people that, that get invited to play with symphony orchestras because, that's the new, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I
Just,
think you're right. It's like if it doesn't get written, it's not going to happen. That's for
you got to start somewhere, ready, fire, aim,
yeah.
just start doing it.
That's fun.
Write these pieces and then take it to have your band play it, and envision, okay, that's really going to be played by a cellist or that, whatever, but just start doing it. I mean, and I know that I'm not telling you to go climb Mount Everest because, you've already started doing this already in your composition. So just do it.
Thanks, Bob.
Like you said. All right. I'm Bob Baker for Jazz Guitar Today. We're here with Grant Gordy. We appreciate your time, man. And I'm a fan.
It's a pleasure.
So,
Thanks,
all right.
Bob.
Take care, buddy.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so long.
Bye-bye.